You're listening to the Sex and Psychology Podcast, the sex ed you never got in school and won't get anywhere else. I am your host, Dr. Justin Lehmiller. I am a social psychologist and research fellow at the Kinsey Institute and author of the book, Tell Me What You Want, The Science of Sexual Desire and How It Can Help You Improve Your Sex Life. Most people think they understand sexual orientation. For example, if you're a gay man, then that means you're only into other guys. And if you're a straight dude, it means you're only into women, right? As it turns out, however, the reality is a little more complicated than this. In today's show, we're talking about a topic that challenges some of the rigid ideas we tend to have about sexuality. Specifically, we're going to be discussing gay men who sleep with women. Yep, you heard me correctly. And I'm not talking about gay guys who maybe had sex with a woman early in life before they came out. And we're also not talking about gay guys who are sleeping with women because they're in denial about their sexuality. Those things certainly happen. But what we're focusing on here are guys who identify as gay, who are out regarding their sexuality, and who just so happen to have sex with women. We don't really know how common this is, but we do know that it's a thing. So why does this happen? And what the heck does it mean? In today's show, we're going to challenge you to rethink some of your assumptions about human sexuality. As you'll see, sexual orientation is a topic that is more complex, nuanced, messy, and interesting than our current understanding allows. I am joined once again by Dr. Joe Kort, the clinical director and founder of the Center for Relationship and Sexual Health in Royal Oak, Michigan. He is a board-certified clinical sexologist and author of multiple books, including Cracking the Code, Helping Gay Men Understand Their Fantasies. This is going to be another fascinating conversation. Stick around and we're going to jump in right after the break. Do you want to learn more from me in the form of an online or in-person course? Become Sexceptional by getting certified with Sexual Health Alliance, where you can learn from yours truly and a number of top sexuality scholars. Each year with Sexual Health Alliance, I teach courses like Fantasies Around the World, as well as immersive study abroad classes in several exciting countries. Join these programs and become a certified sexuality professional at the same time. From sex therapists to sex educators, sex coaches to sexologists, Sexual Health Alliance streamlines your path to certification while allowing you to learn from leading experts in the field. Most importantly, you'll gain the knowledge, skills, and credentials that you need to excel. Become Sexceptional and connect with world-class experts and an engaged community of sexuality professionals from all across the globe. Start your path to certification today at sexualhealthalliance.com. Okay, Joe, the theme for today's show is gay men who sleep with women. And this is a topic that for many people, I'm sure evokes a lot of strong reactions. Many people are going to be like, wait, what's going on here? So let's start there. Why do you think the sheer idea of gay men having sex with women is going to make so many people uncomfortable?
Oh, it's so uncomfortable when I talk about it online and nobody believes me and these guys are really bi. And I just think that people, and it's getting worse. It was bad enough in my generation and my generation worked really hard to change this and it just got worse, which is what you do in bed, who you're with in bed is who you are and how you must define yourself. So if you're with a woman and you're sexual with a woman, that means you're not fully straight or gay, sorry. And that's not true. How could that be true? There's a lot of gay men who, especially the younger, are much more willing to be sexual and don't have the kind of judgment that older generations do.
Yeah, and you're right that there could be a bit of a generational difference here. And, I think there are all kinds of reasons why there is this discomfort. But I think you're right that it does go back to this idea that people tend to see sexual orientation in these pretty rigid and often binary kinds of terms, like that you're either this or you're that, right? And it used to be that people thought, and this wasn't that long ago, that you're either gay or you're straight. It wasn't until recently that we're like, yeah, bisexuality is a thing too. And now today we also talk about pansexuality and so forth. But there still is this idea today that if you are gay or if you are straight, that you're only going to be attracted to or will only engage with people of your desired gender, right? Or sex. And so, I think it's really important for us to start this conversation by taking a step back and talking about what sexual orientation really means. So how do you define it? What does sexual orientation mean to you?
it's an enduring attraction to somebody of a gender that you have, and it's multiple people of that gender, right? A large part of my practice has always been mixed orientation marriages, right? Today, a lot of people are saying, well, those guys are bi if they were with that woman. Well, he was only attracted to that one woman because that was his person. He had an emotional connection. And yes, he was sexually aroused by her and turned on, but he's only attracted to men because his sexual orientation is toward men in general and only to this woman. That's not necessarily being bi. That's somebody who's gay plus one kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading a description that sounded exactly like this, right? Where it was talking about this woman who has sex with her best friend who happens to be a gay man. And she said that the way he described his sexual orientation was that he is attracted to men, like as a class of people. And she is the only woman that he is attracted to. And so he's like, I'm gay, but with like this very small asterisk on it, right? Because, I'm not attracted to this whole class of women, but I am attracted to you. And she actually found that to be like really validating, like that she was the one exception to the rule. And so that's part of, I think, kind of what made it work for them. But that is the way that he kind of understood his sexuality, was along the lines of exactly what you were saying, was that, he's attracted to men, but there's this one woman that he's also attracted to. And so at least in his view or his idea or his understanding of sexuality or sexual orientation, that doesn't make him not gay anymore. It's just gay with a small asterisk.
No, and I think what's unfortunate is a lot of bisexuals, there is bi erasure. And I understand they're upset about that. And so then they're trying to bring in as many people as they can to say, well, no, that's bi, and no, that's bi. And no, it isn't. That with the asterisk is a gay man with one woman. That's not a bisexual man.
Yeah. And I think, again, this gets into tricky, complicated territory when you start trying to define sexual orientations, because everybody's got their own idea or view of it. And where it is different from something like bisexuality or pansexuality is that, again, depending on the way that you define it, it means that you're broadly attracted to people of more than one gender. And so it's not just about like that one person, but possible interactions with sexually, romantically, otherwise, with multiple people of multiple sexes or genders. So I guess that's the way to try to think about how this might be a little bit different. I know that's going to be challenging for some people to do, but it's sexual orientation. It's just, it doesn't fit into the neat little boxes that we like to think that it does.
No, and let me say this too, that if a man came in and said, yeah, that was me with the asterisk and I identify as bi, I wouldn't challenge him. I wouldn't say, no, you're not bi. I don't think of that as bi. But then you think about this, where there are gay men that are attracted to straight men, and even more so when he's with a woman. And if the straight man says, I want you to do this to my wife or my girlfriend, I want you to eat her out, I want you to have sex with her in front of me, he would be turned on not necessarily by her, but by being in that power exchange or being told what to do by the straight guy. That's erotic orientation. That's what I can't get people to understand online. When I say these things, their minds blow up.
Yeah, and I'm sure some people listening will have their minds blown by this. But yes, it's so true. Just the way that we define and think about sexual orientation is just, it's very different and highly, highly individualized. And I also know some people who, for example, by all appearances, seem to be heterosexual, right? And so they only sleep with and are in relationships with people of the other sex. But they might have same-sex fantasies, and they might identify themselves as bisexual just on the basis of their fantasies, right? And I'm not going to challenge them, like if that's their self-understanding of their sexuality. But, some people are not behaviorally bisexual, but still identify as bi because maybe they have some level of attraction or they have some fantasies that are bisexual. So again, this gets into that complex issue of, orientation versus identity, which can be two different things as well. So yeah, it's, there just aren't neat little boxes here.
Well, the other box, if I could say this, that I don't know, you've probably heard this too, where a lot of gay guys think they're bisexual because they like having sex with trans men who haven't had bottom surgery, right? So they're fingering him, they're, penetrating, they're eating him out, and they think that that's heterosexuality, even though it's a trans man. So again, people are identifying it by what they do, not, you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Totally know what you're saying. And again, yeah, that's where it also gets complex is, what is the identity or gender of the other person that you're having sex with? And are they trans versus cis? And that adds this other layer of complexity to it. So yeah, it's not as simple to define and understand as people might like to think that it is. So there are a fair number of gay men who have had sex with women. Now, most often, this is something that happens early on, kind of in the coming out phase. Maybe they were unsure of their sexuality, or maybe they had some internalized homophobia, and maybe they were trying to, quote unquote, pray the gay away by sleeping with women, right? So, sometimes it's early on in the coming out process that gay men will have sex with women. We know that there's this phenomenon of transitional bisexuality where some gay men do identify as bi on the route to coming out. That doesn't invalidate bisexuality as an identity. And it doesn't mean that these men were actually bi. It was just a thing that they did as they were trying to understand their own sexuality. But that's not really what we're talking about here. What we're talking about today are gay men who have formed a gay identity. They lead a gay life, but they have sex with women. And that's the thing that's a lot harder for people to wrap their head around. And I think the first time I ever heard about this was several years ago when I knew a guy who was happily gay and had had many previous male partners. But one day he decided he was going to start sleeping with women. And he did. And he started having multiple female partners. And his rationale was that he had kind of already done everything, And so for him, it was just kind of like this kinky, edgy, novel thing to start having sex with women because he felt like he had already done everything there was to do with men. Now, I don't know how common that is as a motivation, but I'm curious for you in your own work with gay men who sleep with women, what are some of the main reasons why they might do it? Why might a gay man start having sex with women?
Well, that's definitely one of them. And I love that example because it's exploratory, right? Like I'm exploring, I want to have new experiences. So then that's one reason. Another reason is what we should talk about fluidity, right? So this actually happened to me, although I've never had sex with a woman. But when I did turn 50, I was in front of a woman who was wearing this zipper dress. And I always appreciate beautiful women, always like the way they dress. But there was something about this woman and this time and this place. I started having naughty thoughts. I started thinking about unzipping her and fucking her. And I'm a side. So all these fantasies had nothing to do with me. Well, I mean, it did, but it also scared me. Was I a latent heterosexual? Was I going to have to leave my, husband? The whole thing. But there can be a fluidity where there's something about a woman and you just click with her and it works. And people think, well, if you did it, then you were attracted to women. No, it was something about this woman. It's not attraction to women in general, like you said.
Yeah, something about that specific person. And that has me wondering how much of this is about desire for emotional intimacy. I know a lot of gay men who really struggle to be emotionally intimate with other men. And they will talk about how easy it is to find other men to have sex with, but they can't find somebody to have a relationship with because it's just really hard to find that emotional intimacy and connection. But by the same token, a lot of these men seem to be able to easily establish that emotional intimacy with women. So could that be part of what's going on here is that for some of these gay men, it's not maybe as much about the sex as it is about kind of the emotional intimacy and connection that they can have with a woman?
Yes, it's more relational, where a lot of gay men are having transactional sex, not necessarily relational sex. So it gives them that opportunity as well. That's such a good point. And that makes it, they're having sex with a woman, but it makes the relational part more important than the female part.
Sex is a skill, and like any skill, it needs to be learned, practiced, and mastered. That's something I wish someone would have told me years ago, because here's the truth. Most of us never got sex education beyond the basics, and then we enter adulthood thinking that we're supposed to magically know how to be great in bed. But I certainly didn't. So if you feel the same way, you're in good company. Good sex is something that I had to learn, and that's why I'm thankful for Beducated. I have learned so much from Beducated over the years that has genuinely helped me to level up my own intimate life. One of my favorite courses is Foreplay for Couples. Research shows that across genders, people say they want foreplay to last about twice as long as it currently does. This course will teach you exactly how to do that with simple techniques that you can incorporate that build anticipation with slow, deliberate touch. It will completely change the energy between you and your partner and give you concrete tools to bring more excitement and eroticism into foreplay. That's what I love about Beducated. They take all the pressure off by giving you actual skills that you can use. Whether you want to deepen intimacy, learn new techniques, try a kinky date night, or finally get clarity on something that you've always been too shy to ask, Beducated has over 150 courses taught by experts in sex and intimacy. And if you want to turn up the heat during these colder months, this is honestly the best investment you can make in your sex life. Right now, you can get 50% off the yearly pass, locked in for life, when you use code LayMiller, and it's totally risk-free. There's a 14-day money-back guarantee. So skip the last-minute impulse gifts and give yourself or someone you love the gift of sexual confidence and pleasure. Ready to get beducated? Hit the link in the show notes to start exploring, and be sure to use my last name to get your discount. Let's talk about low libido. If you've ever looked for a supplement in the hopes of giving yours a little boost, you know what a minefield it can be. There are so many options, and some of them contain really questionable ingredients. It's a market that's notorious for products that are underdosed, ineffective, or in some cases, just downright shady. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Drive Boost from VB Health. VB Health has changed the game by focusing on what truly matters: trust and transparency. Imagine a libido supplement formulated by doctors, one that's rigorously third-party tested for purity and potency, so you know exactly what you're getting. And it's made with care in the USA. That's Drive Boost. This supplement is also unique because it's formulated for both men and women. So if you're ready to ditch the shady stuff and choose a libido supplement that's effective and that you can feel confident about, it's time to check out Drive Boost. Learn more and get yours at vb.health. Visit vb.health and use code Justin to get 10% off, or click the link in the show notes. Now, I know a lot of people listening are still probably like, these guys can't be gay, right? They have to be bisexual, or maybe they're sexually fluid, or maybe they're pansexual. So what do you say to people who are like, no, a guy can't be gay if he's having sex with women, right? Does your sexual behavior necessarily have to align with your sexual orientation and your sexual identity?
No, and that's where I talk about the sexual orientation versus erotic orientation. Your sexual orientation is to men. Your erotic orientation includes women. Like, how there are lesbians that find gay porn, male porn, very erotic. You've written about this. There are lesbians that are attracted to men and they have sex with men. We see this in different movies. The Kids Are All Right is where they showed it to a degree. Well, no, it was a big part of that movie. But we understand they're still lesbian. They're lesbians who've had sex with men. We are talking about gay men who have sex with women. It isn't about their behavior. They just have erotic interest that includes women.
Yeah. And I think when you get into this category of identity discrepant porn watching, that opens up a whole other box of worms. Like, for example, I know a lot of gay men who really enjoy watching straight porn. And I also know a lot of straight women and lesbians who really enjoy watching gay male porn, right? A lot of times the things that we're turned on by and the activities that we find arousing in porn, on paper, they don't align with our sexual orientation, but that doesn't prevent us from being turned on by them, right? And it doesn't change what the underlying sexuality is. It's just, again, sometimes we might be turned on by things that just don't line up with our stated sexual orientation or our sexual identity label. And again, this is where, when it comes to identification, that's a little bit mushy, because we can choose the identity that we feel most comfortable with and that we think best represents us. And different people are going to make different identity choices. That doesn't mean that their sexual orientation is a choice, just that the label that we apply to that is a choice. It's representative of our own self-understanding. And so you might be a woman who only sleeps with other women, but you like watching gay male porn, and you're going to stick with that lesbian label for your identity because that makes the most sense to you. But if there is a gay man who sleeps with a woman who only sleeps with one woman and he wants to identify as bi, that's fine. If he wants to identify as gay with an asterisk, that's fine too. If he just wants to be flat out gay, that's fine as well. It's about what feels comfortable to the individual when we're talking about identity and labeling.
I think also what's super important about people listening to us is the nuances. It's not literal. It isn't concrete. There's so many nuances. Some gay men have sex with women because they're attracted to her husband or they're attracted to her boyfriend or whatever. And it's a way of sleeping with the boyfriend, but doing it with her. And he's still aroused by her and finds her attractive, but in his head, it has a lot to do with him. It's a headspace.
Wow. Now that's interesting. I had not heard that before. So it makes sense. It adds up that it's like, it's a way of vicariously sleeping with this straight guy that I know I'll never get to sleep with or whatever. But if I could sleep with his wife or girlfriend or whatever, and she's open to that, then yeah, I could see how on some level he might have felt like he fulfilled that fantasy. That's interesting. I'm going to have to think about that one because I've not heard that before.
And the other thing, you think about fetishes, like there are people that have foot fetishes, right? So maybe they find that the female foot is now also erotic for them. So they're willing to engage in that kind of sex. Maybe they're not having intercourse, but it's fetish play, kink play. They prefer a man's foot, but there's something erotic by having watched it in porn and seeing men doing it with painted toenail feet, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. And this also has me thinking about the rise of pornography where there's, sort of more elements of gender play in it. I think that that's become more common in recent years, and to what extent that might be opening up this door to more extensive erotic attraction that kind of goes beyond what we might traditionally associate with a certain sexual orientation, something to research down the road.
Right. Women are sometimes more permissive around gender play in the bedroom. So the gay guy might be interested with her because he almost is a way for him to express different ways of gender expression without doing it in real life. And she's going to be permissive and it can be erotic for him.
Now, wait, I just had a thought pop into my head and I got to ask you this question. So could it also be that sometimes a gay man might sleep with a woman because he doesn't consider that to be cheating, right? So if he was sleeping with another man, maybe that was infidelity in the context of his relationship, but maybe if it's a woman, he doesn't feel like or interpret it as cheating. What do you think?
I would say 100% because I see straight men who have sex with men who don't consider it cheating. So why wouldn't it be the other way around? 100% yes.
Yeah. Now, you just mentioned straight men who have sex with other men, which is the flip side of what we're talking about here. And so I'm curious about how these two groups are similar or different. Are the reasons or motivations the same when you're comparing straight men who sleep with men to gay men who sleep with women?
They are, but one thing that makes them different is a lot of women won't be adventurous as men are. So the straight men who are having sex with men, and this blows people's mind online too, they're not attracted to the men they're doing it with. They're getting opportunities to explore, adventure, and have the kinds of sex that they wouldn't feel good about asking female partners or actually get from a female partner, where I don't think that's as true for gay men.
Oh, that's interesting. And, I heard you give a talk at the Sexual Health Alliance conference about this topic a couple of months ago at their annual sexological conference. And I could see a lot of people in the room as you were discussing this topic who were like, my mind is blown. I just had no idea.
Yeah, right. You know how it started was a lot of sexually abused men are in my practice. I work with trauma. And then it turned out that a lot of them were straight and they were trauma reenacting. But then we talk about in the field trauma play. And some of it is trauma based, where now I want to play with the very thing that happened to me in Boy Scouts, in a sleepover or whatever. But it isn't all pathological. Sometimes it's just a way of getting off and the man is there and it's an opportunity. Availability.
And sometimes it's also just about easy sex, right? Men on average tend to be a bit more DTF, if you will, right?
Yes.
Compared to women. I know, for example, a lot of bisexual men who really struggle when it comes to finding a female partner, but have no shortage of male partners that they can find, right? And it just is easier on average to find sex with other men. And so there may be straight men who are in positions where there's an opportunity where they get offered oral sex by a gay guy and they might just agree to do it because, the opportunity is there or available. And especially if you have a few drinks that might contribute to it. There's actually some interesting research on heterosexual people that finds that the more alcohol they consume, the more open they are to having a same-sex experience. And, they actually did this study by, the researchers were wandering around a college campus at different points in the evening and would give like a breathalyzer to people and then have them complete this little survey about, how open they would be to having a same-sex experience. And basically what they found was that the drunker people were, the more likely they were to sort of agree to a same-sex experience. So I think there's also a role of alcohol and substances in sort of facilitating or opening up interest in kind of exploring beyond your sexuality or sexual orientation.
There is also one more commonality between gay and straight men, where straight men would have sex with men so they can bottom, right? So they're too afraid to ask their female partners and they really want to have prostate stimulation, where the gay men want to have ease of penetration without having to do all the prep work and all the, waiting for somebody to get ready to have sex. So a female is more available for that. So there's that kind of commonality, even though they're very different.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was mentioning earlier that before the show, I was reading an article written by a woman who's having sex with this gay man, and he's her best friend, and they live together, and like they have a dog, and they don't really know how to label their relationship, and they don't know how to talk to other people about it at all because nobody kind of gets it. And she's under no illusions that like his attraction to men is going to go away. Like she's not trying to convert him, if you will. But again, she just kind of still really struggles with how to describe this situation, but it works for them. So I was wondering if we could talk about the flip side here a little bit in terms of, well, why might a straight woman, want to have sex with a gay man?
That's a great question. Well, we have to also acknowledge, Jacob and Samantha, who are really big online, right? Here, he's an identified gay man having sex with a woman, and she knows he's gay and they're monogamous. And, we should just give a shout out to them that they're part of what we're talking about. But so sometimes it's her fantasy. If he chooses me, then I am that valuable, right? And then I don't have to do all the dancing around that I have to do with a straight guy or worry that I'm just being objectified. This guy really wants me, is what they'll say.
Yeah, and it goes back earlier to what we were saying about there are some straight women who really get off on gay male porn. And so maybe being with a gay man could also be arousing or erotic for that reason because they've seen all this porn where they just think that gay men are hot. And so maybe that's part of it as well.
Right, with the absence of patriarchy, right? So it gives them that as well.
Yeah. And, there's a whole political angle here to all of this too, in terms of like masculinity and gender norms and all of that stuff. But something else I was thinking about with respect to politics is that, there are lots of people within the LGBTQ community who will talk about your sexual orientation as something that you're born with, that it's innate, it's unchanging, it's fixed. And so the sheer fact that some gay men are having sex with women makes a lot of people in this community uncomfortable because it seems to fly in the face of that narrative. And talking about this is something that some people might be worried that it's going to give fodder to anti-LGBTQ groups who might see this as evidence that, well, maybe sexual orientation isn't so stable after all, and people don't have to be gay, and maybe it's a choice, right? I'm not saying that's what I believe, but I'm saying anti-LGBTQ groups might interpret it this way, just like they've done with research on sexual fluidity. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how can we have conversations about topics like this without giving ammunition to people who are kind of working to undermine gay rights?
I've thought a lot about this. And the thing is that we all have the capacity to be sexual with somebody, surprisingly to us, that we aren't generally attracted to, whether they're not our type or they're not our gender. And again, it kind of flies in the face of who we sleep with, and what we do in bed doesn't change who we are. It's not a magic show where suddenly we're instantly another orientation. It doesn't work that way. You can't force it. Like when I said, I came out at 50 as having some fluidity, it's not that I could force it. I didn't say, oh God, I tried so hard to look at, by the way, at that Farrah Fawcett picture when I was 15 and masturbate to it. It didn't work. You can't force it. But at 50, it naturally came. But it doesn't mean, this whole conversion therapy crap, that you can't make it happen. It happens as it happens. It's a fluidity.
So last question, since we're running short on time here, what do you most want people to take away from this conversation about gay men who sleep with women and straight men who sleep with men? How do you want people to think differently about human sexuality going forward?
It doesn't threaten bisexuality. Bisexual does exist, and it doesn't erase bisexuality if you are a gay man or a straight sleeping with a woman or a straight man sleeping with a man. That there's erotic orientation. We have to make room for people who have all kinds of things going on in their head that fly in the face of their sexual orientation. And for people to just understand that, like I said before, orientations evolve, whether it's sexual or erotic. And what we do, please, I just want everyone to listen, doesn't necessarily mean it's who we are.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Joe, for coming and blowing our minds once again. So I really appreciate this amazing conversation. It was a pleasure to have you here. Can you please tell my listeners where they can go to learn more about you and your work and get copies of your books?
Yes, it was a pleasure being here with you too. Yes, you can go to my website, joekort.com, JOEKORT. And then I have my own podcast there. And then my books are on my site. And then it also has links to my social media as well, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook and all that.
Great. Well, I will be sure to include links to all of that in the show notes. Thanks again for your time. I really appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. To keep up with new episodes of this podcast, visit my website, Sex and Psychology, at sexandpsychology.com, or subscribe on your favorite platform, where I hope you'll take a moment to rate and review the show. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please consider becoming a Sex and Psychology Premium subscriber to enjoy ad-free listening for just $3.99 a month. You can also follow me on social media for daily sex research updates. I'm on Blue Sky and X at Justin Lehmiller and Instagram at Justin J. Lehmiller. Also, be sure to check out my book, Tell Me What You Want. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.